I'm Tony Holness. I'm the Public Policy Director at the ACLU of Maryland.
Hi, I'm Kaylin Young, Public Policy Counsel here at the ACLU of Maryland.
My name is Kimberly Humphrey. I'm Legislative Counsel for Education at the ACLU of Maryland.
My name is Justin Nally. I'm the Policy Analyst within the Education Program at the ACLU of Maryland.
During the 2019 legislative session, the ACLU's Education Department will be working on education funding, school climate, and school facilities.
Our goals for the legislative session are two-pronged. There are a number of legislative bills that we hope to advance, but more than that, we are also hoping to shift some of the power balance that we see between well-resourced lobbyists and advocates and folks who are maybe not as well-resourced but are directly impacted by the injustices that we are working to remedy.
So the ACLU of Maryland this year will be fighting to end solitary confinement for youth under the age of 18 in the state of Maryland. Solitary confinement is defined as locking an individual in a cell for 22 or more hours in a day without any meaningful human contact. This practice has been linked to mental illness, including self-mutilation and suicide in adults. So what we question is, why would we subject youth to this type of torture? We'll be fighting this year to end that practice because we believe it's right morally, and it's not a practice that makes us any safer. It's not a practice that has any rehabilitatable penal impact on those who are incarcerated. And so it'd be good for us to end that practice in the state of Maryland.
This legislative session, we are really hoping to make some headway on immigrants' rights. Specifically, we are hoping for passage of the Community Trust Act. The last time we really spent time digging into this was in 2017, and we think with everything that we are seeing coming from the federal government, the urgency is even greater than it was in 2017 as far as what our immigrant communities in Maryland are dealing with. And so it's all the more important that we don't have our local law enforcement resources, dollars, personnel being entangled with ICE immigration efforts.
And that's important because what we find is that because local law enforcement has entered into 287G programs and other types of agreements with ICE, we see the immigrant community not reporting lawsuits or not reporting violence that they may be victim to for fear of deportation of themselves or their family members who may be living with them. That goes against good policy and good governance.
The Kerwin Commission is a 25-member body that's appointed by the state. They're chaired by Dr. Brett Kerwin, and the commission's charge is to revise and update the funding formula for the state of Maryland.
Unfortunately, the Kerwin Commission has been at this for over 2 years, and we are nowhere near where we thought we'd be. I would have loved to sit here and let you know that with 100% confidence, I know that legislators will introduce the full comprehensive package that students deserve and need. Instead, what we will be doing is fighting to make sure that whatever comes forward centers wealth issues, meaning we are considering what resources each can provide locally, and that it takes account for race. We have to combat the years of underfunding that have created the achievement gaps and opportunity gaps that we see today.
Here in Maryland, law enforcement agencies are required to report certain information about traffic stops. And that requirement was born actually out of a lawsuit that our office, the ACLU of Maryland, led. It was one of the first driving while black cases in the country. And upon finding rampant racial discrimination on our streets, the General Assembly passed a reporting law. That reporting law needs updating in several respects. First, we need for the data to be disaggregated by jurisdiction and department so that we can know where the discrimination is happening, if it's happening. The second piece is that we want the race and ethnicity categories that are used in the reporting law to match with the census categories. And that's really just practical, because if we want to be able to tell if there is discrimination, we need a baseline population to compare it against. And if the census is using one term to describe a population, say black, and the reporting law says African American, then that's not parallel for us to draw a comparison. The second reform is that really all stops have to be reported. currently, stops that are made for investigatory purposes are not reported, and that can be upwards of thousands of stops, we know. So there's a huge swath of data that's actually not reported. The other piece is that we really need for technology-based stops. Those are stops that are made by radar or vascular technology to be reported. What you will hear from the law enforcement community, we suspect, is that these stops don't need to be reported because they can't be biased, and that's really misleading because the technology can be used in biased ways. It can be used in some jurisdictions more than others. But also, if the technology itself is not biased, then it should provide law enforcement a good control to compare the manual stops against.
In addition to the funding that we're fighting for with the Kerwin Commission, we also want to fight to make sure that students are attending safe and healthy buildings. So this can be done through our 21st Century Buildings Plan and making sure we secure funding for this plan, as well as trying to get more money in the capital budget to improve the schools that are falling apart in the city of Baltimore and other schools across the state.
So this session we're taking a two-pronged approach to remedying this issue of ballot access inside. First, we want to make sure that the folks who are currently eligible to vote actually have meaningful access to the ballot. And so what we're going to be doing is studying the practical implications to make that a reality. How do the ballots get inside the prisons? How do they come out? How do we ensure confidentiality, police postage, all of that kind of logistical thing? That's what we want to be looking at.
And second, this is a race equity issue for us at the ACLU of Maryland. We understand that 69.9% of people who are incarcerated in Maryland are Black. And most of those individuals are from Baltimore City. So you have a specific group whose voice is diminished. And at ACLU of Maryland, we are always going to be advocating to ensure that everyone can participate in the democracy.
The ACLU will be fighting the school to prison pipeline. This is when students are pushed out of school due to unfair discipline policies and practices, and also an elevated police contact. We're trying to make sure that instead of focusing on police or guns or ineffective school discipline policies, that there is more of a commitment to approaches of restorative practices, trauma-informed care, and other supports for teachers and students that will ensure that they're building stronger relationships in schools.
So this session, the ACLU of Maryland will be working with our partner advocates from Job Opportunities Task Force, Out for Justice, and the Maryland Justice Project to advocate for a pre-release facility for women. Currently, there are 9 programs for men in the state of Maryland and 1 for women. And that one is not a standalone brick and mortar, which would be a housing unit also.
The other piece that I'll add is that the criminal justice system was one that was really built for men. And with women being increasingly entangled in the criminal justice system, it's important that gender-sensitive programming be available.
Given some of the recent events in the state of Maryland, and particularly in the city of Baltimore, the ACLU of Maryland is always fighting to increase transparency and accountability with regard to law enforcement. And
under our current law, if you file a complaint of police misconduct, you have no ability to find out what diligence or depth of investigation was conducted to follow up on that complaint. You will be able to find out if the complaint was sustained and if there was discipline imposed, but you have no ability to find out if witnesses were contacted, if a statement was taken, if the site of the offense was visited. And so you can imagine that would be really unsatisfying if, for example, your complaint was unsustained and no discipline was imposed. Transparency is really a threshold to police accountability, and so what we are fighting for really is police transparency for victims of police misconduct.
So we're working on these really important bills, but we really need your help to be more effective.
So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and check out the website.
To get more information about our legislative priorities, about how you can get involved, how you can contact your legislator, and other important tips and tricks to be effective in Annapolis.
We will be hosting a lobby day for ACLU supporters like you across the state, and we hope you will be able to join us.